December frost painted delicate ferns across the windows of Ravensworth Manor, transforming the ancient Kent estate into a palace of ice and memory. Lady Ceres Jones stood before her bedroom mirror, her reflection wavering in the candlelight as her maid, Beatrice, fastened the last pearl button on her forest green velvet gown. The color had once been her favorite. It brought out the copper highlights in her chestnut hair and made her hazel eyes appear almost golden. Now it felt like armor she was reluctant to don. "You look beautiful, my lady," Beatrice said softly, adjusting the ivory lace at Ceres's shoulders, "truly radiant." Subscriber Plea. Before we begin this tale of secrets, second chances, and unexpected love, I have a small request. If stories of wounded hearts finding healing speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel and leaving a comment sharing your thoughts. Your support helps us bring more romantic tales to life, and every like truly makes a difference. Ceres managed a wan smile. Beautiful. She had been beautiful 3 months ago at the Duchess of Cambridge's autumn ball, when Lord Adrian Hastings had taken her hand and led her onto the dance floor. She had been beautiful when he whispered promises in her ear between waltzes, when he brought her champagne and quoted Byron, when he tucked a late-blooming rose behind her ear and told her she outshone every woman in London. She had been beautiful right up until the moment he publicly declared his undying love for her cousin, Helena Ashford, in front of half the ton. The memory still burned with the intensity of a brand. Adrian's golden head bent close to Helena's pale blonde curls. The sudden hush that fell over the ballroom. His voice, clear and unwavering, proclaiming Helena the only woman he could ever love. The wave of whispers that followed, the pitying glances, the barely concealed delight of the gossip-mongers who would dine out on the scandal for months. "My lady," Beatrice's gentle voice pulled her back to the present. "Shall I fetch your pearls?" "Yes, thank you." Ceres touched her throat, feeling suddenly exposed. The pearls had been her mother's, a tangible connection to the woman who had died when Ceres was only 8. She needed that strength tonight. A soft knock preceded her father's entrance. Lord Edmund Jones, Earl of Gloucester, stood in the doorway, his silver-streaked hair immaculate despite the late hour. Concern etched deep lines around his blue eyes as he studied his daughter. "Ceres, my dear." He crossed the room and took her hands. "You need not attend tonight. The Duke of Nottingham would understand. I could send word that you're unwell, and confirm every whispered speculation that I'm hiding in shame." Ceres pulled her hands free, though gently. "That I'm too heartbroken, too humiliated to show my face in society. You have nothing to be ashamed of." "I know that, father." She met his gaze steadily. "Which is precisely why I will not hide. I have done nothing wrong." The journey to Nottingham Estate passed in a blur of frost-covered countryside and gathering darkness. When their carriage finally rolled up the torchlit drive, Ceres steeled herself. Blazing candles illuminated every window of the magnificent house. Evergreen garlands draped the entrance, their pine scent mixing with the wood smoke curling from a dozen chimneys. Through the windows, she could see the glitter of jewels and the swirl of evening gowns as guests danced to the strains of a string quartet. The moment she entered the ballroom, a ripple of attention spread through the crowd like wind across water. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. Eyes tracked her progress as she descended the stairs on her father's arm, chin high, expression serene. And there, by the marble fireplace inevitable as winter, stood Adrian and Helena. Adrian's golden hair caught the candlelight like a halo, his perfectly tailored black evening coat emphasizing his tall, athletic frame. Helena stood beside him in a rose silk gown that made her look like a porcelain doll, delicate and perfect. They were the picture of contentment, of young love triumphant. Their eyes met across the crowded room. For one suspended moment, the music and chatter faded to nothing. Adrian's mouth curved into a smile, not apologetic, not embarrassed, mocking. He raised his champagne glass in a subtle toast, his expression radiating satisfaction. Helena glanced up at the gesture, caught sight of Ceres, and immediately looked away, a becoming blush staining her cheeks. But Ceres had seen the flash of something else in her cousin's eyes before she'd turned. Not guilt, triumph. The sound of Helena's laugh reached her across the room moments later, light, musical, crystalline. It struck Ceres like shattered crystal against her nerves, each note a tiny blade. She felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. "Excuse me, father," she murmured. "I need some air." Before he could protest, she slipped through the crowd. heading for the French doors that led to the terrace. The cold hit her like a physical blow as she stepped outside, but she welcomed it. Snow was falling in thick, silent flakes, transforming the manicured gardens into something magical and strange. She gripped the frozen stone balustrade, fighting the tears that threatened to spill despite her determination. She would not cry. She would not give them that satisfaction. Forgive the intrusion. The deep voice came from the shadows at the far end of the terrace, making her start. A figure detached itself from the darkness, a tall man in evening clothes, his face partially obscured by the falling snow and the dim light spilling from the ballroom windows. Ceres straightened, hastily composing her features. "I apologize. I did not realize anyone else was here. The fault is mine. I should have made my presence known sooner." He stepped closer, and she caught a glimpse of dark hair and darker eyes in a face too angular to be considered conventionally handsome. "Though I confess, I was enjoying the solitude. These affairs can be rather suffocating." Something in his tone, a wry humor mixed with genuine understanding, made her relax slightly. "They can, indeed. Allow me to introduce myself, Lord Dominic Ashford, Duke of Harrington." He bowed, elegant despite the snow gathering on his broad shoulders. "And you must be Lady Ceres Jones. I've heard much about you." At the name Ashford, Ceres felt her composure slip again. "Helena's brother. Cousin, actually, though we were raised as siblings after my parents died." His expression was unreadable in the darkness. "I realize this is awkward, given the circumstances." The circumstances. Ceres heard the bitter laugh escape before she could stop it. "A delicate way to phrase it, Your Grace. Would you prefer I be blunt?" He moved to stand beside her at the balustrade, his gaze fixed on the snow-covered gardens rather than her face. "Very well. My cousin behaved abominably, as did Lord Hastings, and I am deeply sorry that my family name is attached to your pain." The unexpected candor stole her breath. She turned to study his profile, strong jaw, straight nose, a mouth set in grim lines. "You don't need to apologize for Helena's choices." "Perhaps not, but someone should." He finally looked at her, and in his dark eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Understanding, and an echo of her own carefully hidden anguish. "I know what it's like to be the subject of society's gossip, to have your private heartbreak turned into public entertainment. Do you?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "I do." His smile was brief and without humor, though that's a tale for another time, perhaps. He gestured toward the ballroom, where the music had shifted to a waltz. "They're watching us, you know, wondering what we're discussing out here in the snow." Ceres glanced back through the windows. He was right. Several faces were turned their way, including Adrian's. Her former suitor's expression had shifted from smug satisfaction to something else. Concern? Jealousy? The Duke of Harrington noticed her gaze and said quietly, "We could give them something to truly speculate about, if you wish." "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I mean, Lady Ceres, that perhaps we could help each other." Ceres studied the man before her with new attention. In the better light spilling from the ballroom, she could see him more clearly now. He was tall, taller than Adrian by several inches, with dark hair that fell slightly longer than fashion dictated, giving him an air of casual disregard for society's strictures. His eyes, which she had thought dark in the shadows, were actually a piercing shade of blue, like ice beneath winter water. His features were sharp and aristocratic, but there was a weariness about them that spoke of burdens carried too long. He wore his evening clothes with an elegance that seemed effortless, as though he'd been born in tailcoats and silk cravats. Yet something about his stance suggested a man more comfortable in riding boots, striding across wind-swept moors than dancing in glittering ballrooms. "Help each other how, Your Grace?" she asked, though caution made her voice cool. "Forgive me. I've been remiss." He offered a slight, self-deprecating smile. "I gave you my title, but not my full name. Dominic O'Donnell, Duke of Devonshire. I spend most of my time at my estate in Cornwall these days. I'm only here because my uncle, the Duke of Nottingham, threatened to write me out of his will if I didn't attend his Christmas festivities." "Cornwall," Ceres repeated. The name stirred something in her memory, fragments of whispered conversations, pitying glances directed at an empty chair at various society gatherings. Then it struck her with the force of revelation. "You're that Duke of Devonshire." His expression shuttered. "Ah, so the rumors have reached even you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean." She stopped, gathered herself. 5 years ago, The fire at your Edinburgh estate. 5 years, 2 months, and 17 days. His voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who has learned to wall off pain behind precision. But who's counting? The details came back to her now. The scandal had dominated the gossip columns for months. The Duke of Devonshire's country house, consumed by flames in the dead of night. His parents, the former Duke and Duchess, perished. His younger sister, Eloise, barely 16 years old, lost as well. And Dominic himself away on business in London, returning only to find his family reduced to ash and memory. He had vanished from society after that, becoming more ghost than man, spoken of in whispers and speculation. "I lost my mother when I was 8, Ceres said quietly. "I know there are no words that help, but I am truly sorry for your loss." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the carefully maintained facade. "Thank you. Most people either avoid mentioning it entirely or drown me in platitudes. Your honesty is refreshing." Snow continued to fall around them, muffling the sounds from the ballroom. In this strange pocket of quiet, Ceres felt an unexpected kinship with this man she'd met mere minutes ago. "Do you ever tire of carrying your ghosts?" The question escaped before she could consider its boldness. Dominic's laugh was low and rough. "Every day. But I've found they're remarkably persistent. They walk beside you whether you acknowledge them or not. At least if you face them, you can choose the path you both take. That's a rather philosophical approach to grief. I've had 5 years to develop it." He turned to face her fully, his expression serious but not unkind. "But you're not here to discuss my tragedies. You're here to survive, bearing your own, at yet another tedious social event where everyone pretends not to stare while hanging on your every expression." The accuracy of his observation startled a laugh from her. "You paint such a flattering picture of society. I merely call it as I see it." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I recognize a kindred spirit, Lady Ceres, someone who has learned to wear a mask because the alternative is to let them see you bleed." The truth of it struck her like a physical blow. This stranger, this reclusive duke with his own burden of loss, had seen through her careful composure to the raw wound beneath. It should have frightened her. Instead, she felt something dangerously close to relief. "You said we could help each other," she said. "I'm listening." Dominic glanced back at the ballroom, where couples whirled through another waltz. "I propose an arrangement, a temporary courtship that would benefit us both." "A courtship?" Ceres followed his gaze and saw Adrian watching them through the window, his expression no longer mocking. "You barely know me, which makes it perfect." He turned back to her, his blue eyes intent. "You need to prove to society and perhaps to yourself that you've moved beyond Lord Hastings's betrayal. What better way than to capture the interest of a duke who hasn't shown his face in society for half a decade? And what do you gain from this arrangement? A reason to remain in England that doesn't involve my uncle's matchmaking schemes." His mouth twisted wryly. "The moment I arrived, he began parading every eligible lady in 3 counties before me. If I'm already courting someone, he'll be forced to cease his efforts. And when our courtship inevitably ends, we part as friends. No expectations, no complications." He held out his hand, palm up. "A strategic relationship with clear boundaries. You get to walk back into that ballroom on the arm of a duke, showing everyone that you're not only unbroken but thriving. I get to fulfill my familial obligations without enduring another season of desperate debutantes and their ambitious mothers." Ceres stared at his outstretched hand. The audacity of the proposal should have scandalized her, should have sent her fleeing back to her father's protection. Instead, she imagined walking past Adrian with this mysterious, brooding duke at her side. Imagined the shock on Helena's face, the whispers that would follow, not of pity this time, but of speculation and perhaps even envy. "This is madness," she said. "Perhaps, but is it any more mad than forcing yourself to smile through another evening of their barely concealed gloating?" He had a point, and something about Dominic O'Donnell, his blunt honesty, his shared understanding of loss, the weariness in his eyes that matched her own, made her feel less alone than she had in months. "And when it ends?" she asked again. "We part as friends, no expectations, no complications," he repeated. "I give you my word as a gentleman." Ceres took a breath of the cold winter air, felt it burn through her lungs. Then she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm despite the cold, steady and sure. "Very well, Your Grace. I accept your proposal." His smile transformed his face, chasing away some of the shadows that haunted his features. "Dominic, Please, if we're to convince society of this courtship, we should at least dispense with excessive formality. Then you must call me Ceres." They stood there a moment longer, hands clasped, sealing a pact that both recognized as dangerous in ways neither was willing to articulate. Unspoken between them lay the truth that neither was being entirely honest, not about their reasons, not about what they hoped to gain, and certainly not about the secrets each carried, secrets that, if revealed, would threaten to destroy them both. "Shall we?" Dominic offered his arm. Ceres placed her hand on his sleeve, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the fine wool. Together, they turned toward the ballroom, toward the light and music and watching eyes. The moment they stepped through the French doors, a hush fell over the nearest guests. Heads turned. Conversations stuttered to a halt. The string quartet played on, but it seemed every eye in the room had fixed upon them, upon the reclusive Duke of Devonshire and the jilted Lady Ceres Jones, entering together from the snowy terrace, her hand resting intimately on his arm. Across the room, Adrian's champagne glass paused halfway to his lips. Helena's fan snapped shut with an audible crack. Ceres lifted her chin and smiled. The gasps rippled through the ballroom like wind across water. Ceres felt every eye upon them as she and Dominic moved deeper into the glittering space, but she refused to falter. Beside her, Dominic walked with the easy confidence of a man utterly unbothered by scrutiny, his hand settling over hers where it rested on his arm, a possessive gesture that sent another wave of whispers through the assembled guests. Adrian's face had gone pale beneath his golden tan, his expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something that looked dangerously close to jealousy. Helena stood frozen beside him, her mouth falling open in a most unladylike display of astonishment. "Your Grace," the Duchess of Bedford materialized before them, her sharp eyes gleaming with curiosity. "How delightful to see you in society again. And with Lady Ceres, no less. What an unexpected pairing." "Is it?" Dominic's tone was perfectly pleasant, perfectly bland. "I find Lady Ceres to be exceptional company, intelligent, gracious, and refreshingly honest. Surely those qualities are always in fashion." The Duchess's smile turned knowing. "Indeed, though one does wonder at the speed of this connection. Winter courtships can develop quite quickly, can they not? When the connection is genuine, Your Grace, timing becomes irrelevant." Dominic's blue eyes met hers steadily. "Wouldn't you agree?" The Duchess laughed, a sound like tinkling bells. "Quite right, quite right. Well, you make a striking pair. I shall look forward to seeing how this develops." She drifted away, already whispering to her companions. Before Ceres could process the encounter, the orchestra struck up a waltz. Dominic turned to her, offering a formal bow. "May I have this dance?" Her breath caught. Dancing with him would be the ultimate declaration, the performance that would cement their arrangement in society's collective consciousness. Of course, his hand found her waist, warm and steady through the layers of silk and velvet. Her own hand rested on his shoulder, and their joined hands rose between them. Then the music began, and they were moving. Ceres had danced with dozens of partners over the years, but nothing had prepared her for this. Dominic moved with a grace that belied his size, leading her through the steps with effortless precision, their bodies synchronized perfectly, as though they had waltzed together 100 times before. The chemistry between them crackled like lightning, shocking in its intensity. "Everyone is watching us," she murmured. His blue eyes held hers, dark and intent. "Let them watch. Let them see that you're desired by someone who actually deserves you." Her heart raced, pounding so hard she was certain he must feel it. This was meant to be pretense, a strategic arrangement. So why did his words feel so dangerously real? Why did the warmth of his hand at her waist send heat flooding through her veins? The waltz ended too soon, and not soon enough. As the final notes faded, Dominic held her a moment longer than strictly necessary before releasing her. The applause around them seemed distant, muffled. "Lady Ceres," Adrian's voice cut through her haze. He stood before them, his expression carefully controlled but his eyes blazing. "Might I have a word?" Dominic's posture shifted subtly, becoming protective. "I'm not certain that's appropriate, Hastings. I merely wish to congratulate Lady Ceres on her newfound happiness." Adrian's smile was tight, though I confess surprise at the suddenness of this courtship. Only last week, I heard no mention of the Duke of Devonshire in connection with Lady Ceres. "Perhaps," Dominic said with cutting politeness, That's because my intentions are honourable enough to be conducted with discretion rather than broadcast across every ballroom in London. Adrian's jaw tightened. Behind him, Helena hovered nervously, her eyes darting between them like a trapped bird seeking escape. Ceres found her voice, surprised by its steadiness. Lord Hastings, I appreciate your concern, but it is entirely misplaced. The Duke has been everything a gentleman should be. Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe the Duke promised me champagne. She allowed Dominic to guide her away, but once they were beyond Adrian's sight, her legs began to tremble. The confrontation, the performance, the weight of so many watching eyes, it crashed over her all at once. Here, Dominic's hand pressed against the small of her back, steering her toward a quieter corridor lined with portraits of Nottingham ancestors. Take a moment. Ceres leaned against the wall, drawing in deep breaths. I wanted to hurt him. When I saw his face, I wanted him to feel even a fraction of what he made me feel. You're entitled to your anger. Dominic stood before her, his expression gentle. But you showed something far more powerful tonight. You proved you've moved beyond his reach, that you're not broken, not diminished. You're magnificent. She looked up at him, this man who was still essentially a stranger, yet who seemed to understand her better than people she'd known her entire life. Thank you. For this. For all of it. Something shifted in his expression, the careful control slipping to reveal hunger, longing, need. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away, before his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. Ceres, he breathed. The world narrowed to the two of them. His hand cradled her face. She swayed forward, drawn by a force she couldn't name. His head lowered, his breath warm against her lips. Your Grace, there you are. They sprang apart as the Duke of Nottingham's booming voice echoed down the corridor, followed by the rustle of approaching skirts and the murmur of conversation. Dominic stepped back, his expression once again perfectly controlled, though his eyes still burned with that interrupted moment. Ceres pressed her hand to her racing heart, trying to calm her breathing. As the guests rounded the corner, exclaiming over having found them, Ceres realized with crystalline clarity that this arrangement was far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Not because of society's reaction or Adrian's jealousy, but because the line between performance and truth was already beginning to blur. Ceres woke to a world transformed. During the night, snow had fallen in earnest, blanketing the Kent countryside in pristine white that sparkled like diamond dust in the morning sun. From her bedroom window at Ravensworth Manor, she watched the grounds take on the quality of a fairy tale. Ancient oaks bowed under their white burden, the frozen lake a sheet of glass, the rose garden buried in drifts. She should have been exhausted after the previous evening's emotional tumult. Instead, she felt strangely energized, her mind replaying every moment. The shock on Adrian's face, the weight of Dominic's hand at her waist during the waltz, that interrupted almost kiss in the corridor. A soft knock preceded Beatrice's entrance, the maid bearing a breakfast tray and a cream-coloured envelope sealed with the Devonshire crest. This arrived by messenger, my lady, from the Duke. Ceres's heart performed an unexpected flutter as she broke the seal. Lady Ceres, I trust you slept well after our successful debut. Might I impose upon your hospitality this afternoon? There are particulars of our arrangement that warrant discussion, including a schedule of upcoming events where our presence together would prove most strategic. If 3 o'clock proves convenient, I shall call upon you at Ravensworth Manor. Yours in conspiracy, Devonshire. Ceres found herself smiling at conspiracy. The formality of the letter was undercut by that playful closing, revealing glimpses of the man beneath the ducal reserve. At precisely 3 o'clock, Dominic's carriage rolled up the snow-covered drive. Ceres watched from the morning room as he descended, his dark greatcoat dusted with fresh snow, his tall frame even more imposing in the bright winter daylight. Henderson admitted him, and moments later, her father's voice echoed from the entrance hall. Lord Edmund received the Duke in his study, first a protective father's prerogative. Through the closed door, Ceres could hear the low rumble of masculine voices, though not the words themselves. When they finally emerged, her father's expression remained carefully neutral, though something in his eyes suggested grudging approval. Lady Ceres, Dominic bowed over her hand, his lips barely brushing her gloved fingers. Thank you for receiving me. Your Grace, she gestured toward the drawing room. Shall we? They settled by the fire, tea service arranged between them, the door left strategically ajar, proper enough to satisfy propriety. but Henderson's watchful presence in the hallway ensured complete decorum. "I've made a list of upcoming events." Dominic produced a folded paper. Lady Cambridge's Christmas ball in 3 days, the Earl of Bedford's Yuletide gathering the following week, the Gloucestershire hunt on Boxing Day, and of course, the New Year's Eve ball at Kingscott Estate. "Adrian and Helena will attend all of them," Ceres observed. "Precisely, which makes them ideal opportunities to reinforce our narrative." He paused, studying her face. "Unless you'd prefer to avoid such direct confrontation, we could be more selective." "No," Ceres surprised herself with the firmness of her response. "I will not be driven into hiding. We attend them all." Something that looked like admiration flickered in his blue eyes. "As you wish." The conversation drifted from logistics to more personal topics. Ceres found herself asking about his estate in Cornwall, and Dominic's entire demeanor shifted as he described the rugged coastline towering cliffs that plunged into churning seas, wild moorland painted purple with heather, ancient stone circles that predated recorded history. "It sounds beautiful," Ceres said softly. "Lonely, perhaps, but beautiful." "It can be both." He stared into his teacup. "But I've found purpose there, working with the tenant farmers, improving drainage systems, ensuring the workers have decent housing. My father neglected such matters. I've tried to do better." "You have a painter's eye for landscape," Ceres observed. "The way you describe it. That was Eloise's gift, not mine. She could capture." He stopped abruptly, his jaw tightening. Ceres acted on instinct, reaching across the space between them to touch his hand. "Tell me about her." For a long moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, slowly, words began to emerge like water from a long frozen spring. She laughed constantly, at everything, even when things were difficult. She had this way of finding joy in the smallest moments: a bird's song, the first snowdrop, a particularly vivid sunset. His voice roughened. She painted watercolors, terrible ones really, but she loved it so much it didn't matter. She was kind to everyone, servants, tenants, stray animals. She believed the world was fundamentally good. "She sounds wonderful." She was 16. The words came out ragged. "Barely more than a child. And I wasn't there. I was in London, attending to business that seemed so important at the time. If I had been there, if I had been home." "You cannot blame yourself for tragedy," Ceres said firmly, squeezing his hand. "Fire is capricious. Your presence might have changed nothing, or it might have claimed you as well, perhaps." But doubt shadowed his face, and something else, a hesitation, a darkness that went beyond grief. When he spoke of where he'd been that night, there was the slightest catch in his voice, as though the words caught on some unspoken truth. Ceres filed the observation away but didn't press. Everyone was entitled to their private pain. 2 hours passed like minutes. When Henderson discreetly cleared his throat from the doorway, the visit had stretched beyond propriety's limits. Dominic rose reluctantly. At the door, wrapped once more in his snow-dusted greatcoat, he paused. "I enjoyed this afternoon immensely, more than any social occasion I've attended in years." "As did I." Ceres met his gaze. "Perhaps this arrangement will benefit us both in unexpected ways." Something sparked between them, understanding, connection, the dangerous pull of genuine attraction masquerading as convenience. After he left, Ceres leaned against the closed door, one hand pressed to her racing heart. Through the window, she watched his carriage disappear down the snow-covered drive. She had entered this arrangement believing she understood its parameters, a mutually beneficial charade with clear boundaries and a predetermined end. But already, she was learning that Dominic O'Donnell was far more complicated than she'd anticipated. Behind his careful composure lurked shadows she couldn't quite name, secrets that made his blue eyes darken with something more complex than grief. What wasn't he telling her, and why did she suddenly need so desperately to know? 3 days later, Ceres stood before her mirror as Beatrice made final adjustments to her gown's silver silk that shimmered like moonlight, accented with sapphires that matched the winter flowers woven through her elaborately arranged hair. Lady Cambridge's Christmas ball was the most elaborate event of the season, and tonight would solidify the fiction of her courtship with Dominic before all of society. "You look like royalty, my lady," Beatrice breathed, stepping back to admire her work. Ceres barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror appeared confident, radiant, untouchable, so different from the heartbroken girl who had hidden at Ravensworth 3 months ago. Yet beneath the finery, her stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. As Ceres prepares for the most important evening of the season, I must pause to ask if you're enjoying this tale of hidden truths and healing hearts. Please show your support with a like and subscribe. Share in the comments which character you connect with more, guarded Ceres or mysterious Dominic. Your engagement truly keeps these stories alive. At precisely 8 o'clock, Dominic arrived. When she descended the stairs, his reaction stopped her breath-stunned silence, followed by an expression of such unguarded admiration that her cheeks flushed. "You are breathtaking, Ceres." The use of her first name sent heat cascading through her. In the carriage, the intimate space forced them close together, their shoulders brushing with each turn of the wheels. They discussed their performance for the evening, maintaining the pretense of strategy, but the chemistry between them crackled like lightning before a storm. The Cambridge estate blazed with magnificence. Crystal chandeliers dripped with evergreen garlands. Ice sculptures gleamed in candlelight. Winter roses perfumed the air, and the orchestra's music swelled through rooms packed with the cream of society. When they entered on Dominic's arm, conversation rippled into silence. "The Duke of Devonshire, with Lady Ceres." The whispers followed them like wind. Near the refreshment table, Adrian's face darkened to thunderous. Beside him, Helena looked genuinely distressed, her hands twisting her fan. Dominic requested the first waltz. As he swept her onto the floor with commanding presence, his hands settled at her waist, drawing her closer than strictly proper. The room blurred around them. "You're trembling," he murmured. "So are you." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an admission that this felt real, dangerously real, for both of them. The music, the watching crowd, even Adrian's jealous stare, all of it faded until only they existed. "Your Grace, Lady Ceres." Lady Cambridge's sharp voice cut through their private world as the dance ended. "What a delightful development. Do tell me how this courtship began." "Such a well-kept secret." Dominic handled her probing questions with smooth deflection. "Some connections defy explanation, Your Grace. They simply are." Lady Cambridge's knowing smile suggested she saw far more than they wished to reveal. "Well, Lady Ceres, you've certainly captured quite a prize." Her emphasis on captured carried layers of meaning. "Ceres," Helena appeared at her elbow, eyes red-rimmed. "Might I speak with you? Privately?" Dominic's jaw tightened, but Ceres nodded. In the ladies' retiring room, Helena's composure crumbled. "I never meant to hurt you. I fought my feelings for Adrian. But you made your choice, Helena." Ceres's voice could have frozen wine. "Do not seek absolution from me. Adrian speaks of you still," Helena blurted. I think he regrets." "That is no longer my concern." Ceres turned toward the door, but Helena's next words stopped her. "He's not what I thought he was. He's—" She trailed off, distress written across her delicate features. Ceres left without responding. In the corridor, Adrian materialized as though summoned. "Ceres, please, I must speak with you." Before she could respond, Dominic appeared, his presence imposing and protective. "The lady has nothing to say to you, Hastings. This doesn't concern you, Devonshire." "Everything concerning Lady Ceres concerns me." Dominic's tone could have stripped paint. The standoff crackled with tension until Adrian backed down, but he muttered as he turned away, "You don't know what you're involving yourself in." The strange comment lodged in Ceres's mind like a splinter. Dominic guided her to a terrace echoing their first meeting where snow fell in gentle spirals. "Are you well?" "Helena," said Adrian, regrets his choice. Ceres stared at the frozen gardens. "But it changes nothing. Do you still love him?" The question emerged raw, vulnerable. Ceres turned to face Dominic, surprise giving way to certainty. "No, I don't think I ever truly did. I loved the idea of him, the security, the future, but not the man himself." Relief washed over Dominic's features, so visible it made her breath catch. "Good, because I find I cannot stomach the thought of you loving him." The air between them charged with electricity. Dominic stepped closer, his hand rising to cup her face. "Ceres, I must tell you something. I haven't been entirely—" "Ceres," her father's voice carried from inside. "Where have you gone?" The moment shattered, Dominic's hand dropped. Whatever confession had trembled on his lips retreated behind walls of ducal composure. But as they returned inside, Ceres's heart raced with a terrifying realization. She was falling for Dominic O'Donnell, falling hard and fast, despite every rational warning, and whatever secret he'd been about to reveal might destroy them both. The letter arrived with the morning post. nestled among calling cards and invitations. But this envelope bore no return address, no identifying seal, only her name in unfamiliar handwriting. Ceres's hands trembled as she unfolded the single sheet. Ask the Duke about Edinburgh. Ask him about the fire. Not all is as it seems. Unsigned, anonymous, ominous. She stared at the words until they blurred, her mind racing. Who would send such a thing, and what truth was she meant to uncover? Within the hour, she was in her carriage, bound for Dominic's London townhouse in Camberley. The imposing structure rose before her, all austere stone and iron railings, as forbidding as its master pretended to be. The butler showed her to the study, where Dominic stood from behind his desk, surprise and pleasure warring across his features. "Ceres, is something wrong?" Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. The color drained from his face. His fingers tightened on the paper until his knuckles went white. The silence stretched so long she thought he might not speak at all. "Who sent this?" His voice emerged hollow. "I don't know. But I need the truth, Dominic." She stepped closer. "What happened in Edinburgh?" He moved to the sideboard, poured brandy with shaking hands, drank his in one swallow before pouring another. Then he sat heavily in a leather chair, head falling into his hands. "I have not been entirely honest with you." Ceres's heart sank even as she forced herself to remain standing, waiting. "The fire wasn't an accident," the words emerged muffled. "It was set deliberately. I was the target." "I don't understand." "I was involved in intelligence work for the Crown." He looked up at her, his blue eyes haunted. "During the final years of conflict with France, I gathered information, passed it to our government. I thought I was being careful. I thought no one knew." The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. "But someone discovered your identity," Ceres breathed. "A French operative. He set the fire to eliminate me." Dominic's voice cracked. "But I was delayed returning home. So my family died in my place. My parents, Eloise, all of them, burned alive because of my choices." "Dominic, I killed them, Ceres." He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. "As surely as if I'd lit the match myself, everything I did, the intelligence work, the secrets, the lies, it was all for nothing, because the only people who mattered died, and I lived." Years of guilt poured out of him. This was why he'd withdrawn from society, buried himself in Cornwall, refused to allow himself any measure of joy or connection. He believed he didn't deserve happiness, believed he was poison to anyone who cared for him. "I don't deserve you," he finished, his back to her. "I never did. This arrangement was madness. I should never have suggested it." Ceres stood frozen, processing the magnitude of his confession. Then she crossed the room and knelt beside his chair as he collapsed back into it. "You didn't kill them," she said firmly, taking his hands. "A murderer did, an evil man who targeted innocents to strike at you. That is not your fault. If you hadn't served your country, if you hadn't tried to protect England from her enemies," she squeezed his hands. "You cannot carry this guilt forever. Your family wouldn't want you to live like this." Something broke in him then. For the first time since the fire, perhaps the first time since childhood, the Duke of Devonshire wept. Great, shuddering sobs that shook his entire frame. Ceres wrapped her arms around him, holding him through the storm of grief he'd denied himself for 5 years. When the worst had passed, he pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes red-rimmed but clearer than she'd ever seen them. "I agreed to our arrangement because I thought I could control it," he admitted hoarsely. "Keep my distance, maintain the performance. But I cannot, Ceres. I have fallen utterly, irrevocably in love with you, and it terrifies me, because everyone I love dies." Her breath caught. "Dominic, I must confess something as well." The words tumbled out before courage could fail her. "I knew about the fire before tonight. My father told me weeks ago, not the details, but that it wasn't an accident, that you blamed yourself. I knew when I agreed to our arrangement." His eyes widened. "I agreed, partly because I wanted to help you heal," she continued. "I should have told you. I'm sorry." They stared at each other, both vulnerable, both exposed. Two people who had been hiding behind carefully constructed facades, now stripped bare. "We've both been protecting ourselves," Ceres said softly. "Both been dishonest, even as we claimed to be honest with each other. Where do we go from here?" Dominic's voice was raw. "I don't know." She touched his face. "But I do know this. I love you, truly, not as part of an arrangement or a performance. You." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she might disappear. They stayed that way, uncertain but together, two wounded souls who had found each other in the darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it honestly. No more secrets, no more lies. Only the terrifying, exhilarating truth. The Gloucestershire estate sprawled across frost-covered hills, its ancient stones grey against the white landscape. Boxing Day dawned cold and clear, perfect weather for the traditional Christmas hunt. Ceres and Dominic arrived together, their newly honest relationship lending them a quiet confidence that drew curious glances. Adrian and Helena were already present, maintaining careful distance. The tension crackled like ice beneath boot heels. Riders assembled in the courtyard, horses stamping and snorting clouds of vapor. Dominic cut an impressive figure astride his black stallion, and Ceres matched him on her grey mare, both expert riders finding freedom in the winter wind as they thundered across the frozen countryside. For precious moments, troubles faded. There was only speed, cold air burning their lungs, the thunder of hooves, and the simple joy of movement. Then chaos erupted. Adrian's horse reared violently, throwing him hard to the frozen ground. Riders converged, shouting. Helena screamed. Dominic dismounted in one fluid motion, rushing to examine not Adrian, who groaned but appeared intact, but the panicked horse. What he found made his blood run cold. The girth strap. His voice cut through the commotion. It's been cut, nearly through. Silence fell like snow. This was no accident. Someone had sabotaged the tack, intending for the rider to be thrown, perhaps killed. But who was the target? Adrian or Dominic? Discreet inquiry followed. Dominic confided his fears to Lord Edmund. Perhaps the French operative wasn't finished, or perhaps someone else with a grudge had surfaced. They agreed to increased security, though Dominic's face remained grim. Later, as Adrian recovered in the estate's morning room, he requested a private word with Ceres. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he nodded, remaining present, protective. "I owe you truth," Adrian said, his face pale. "My betrothal to Helena. My family was in financial ruin, complete collapse. Helena's father offered salvation, forgiveness of massive debts in exchange for marriage to his daughter." Ceres's breath caught. "I thought I was being noble, saving my family from disgrace." Adrian's laugh was bitter. "But I destroyed something precious. Helena is difficult. The marriage is a burden I must bear. While you," he looked between them, "you have found genuine love." Something like envy shadowed his features. "I was a coward," he continued. "I should have been honest with you from the start. I'm sorry, Ceres. Truly sorry." Ceres felt unexpected pity replace the old bitterness. "I forgive you, Adrian. Not for your sake, but for mine. I wish you well. Truly." The release was profound, like setting down a weight she'd carried too long. That evening, Helena approached with tear-stained cheeks. "I sent the letter, the anonymous one about Edinburgh. I was jealous, spiteful." Her voice broke. "I see how the Duke looks at you. Adrian never looked at me that way. I'm sorry for everything." Ceres surprised herself by taking Helena's hand. "I hope you find happiness, Helena, even if it's not with Adrian." "Thank you," Helena whispered, weeping openly now. Later, alone in their rooms, Dominic pulled Ceres close, his expression troubled. "The incident today. If someone is targeting me, you're in danger by association. Perhaps we should end this as planned. I cannot bear the thought of you being harmed." "This is no longer an arrangement, Dominic." Ceres's voice rang with steel. "I love you, and I will not abandon you to face danger alone. Whatever comes, we face it together." He stared at her, this woman who refused to flinch from shadows, who offered him not pity but partnership. "I don't deserve you. Then spend your life earning me." Something shifted in his expression, decision crystallizing into action. He dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. "Marry me, Ceres, not as pretense, not as strategy. Marry me because I love you beyond reason, because my life has no meaning without you in it." He opened the box, revealing a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the firelight. "This was my mother's. Please be my wife." Tears blurred her vision. "Yes, yes, Dominic, I will marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, then rose, pulling her into a kiss that seared through them, both their first real kiss, not for show, but born of love, need, desperate hope. "I will protect you," he vowed against her lips. "And I will heal you," she promised. They held each other as darkness fell outside, two souls bound by choice and love. Engaged now, truly committed. But beyond the windows, in the gathering shadows, danger still waited. Kingscott Estate in Nottinghamshire blazed with light against the winter darkness. New Year's Eve, the grandest ball of the season, and Ceres and Dominic arrived as an officially engaged couple. The announcement had scandalized and delighted society in equal measure, and the sapphire ring on her finger caught candlelight with every movement. Gold and silver decorations transformed the ballroom into something magical. Hundreds of guests swirled in elaborate finery. Ceres wore midnight blue silk that made her skin luminous, while Dominic cut a commanding figure in formal black. They were the center of attention, and for once, it felt right. Lord Edmund beamed with paternal pride. Even Lady Cambridge offered genuine approval. As midnight approached, the orchestra struck up the final waltz of the year. Dominic pulled Ceres close, closer than propriety strictly allowed, but they were beyond caring. "This time last year, I was alone in Cornwall, drowning in guilt," he murmured against her hair. "Now I stand here with the woman I love, about to begin a new year, a new life." "We saved each other," Ceres whispered. Then she felt his entire body tense. His hand tightened on her waist, his eyes fixed on something beyond her shoulder. "What is it?" "Stay calm." His voice had gone cold, deadly. "Continue dancing as though nothing is wrong." She followed his gaze and saw a dark-haired man watching them from near the refreshment tables. Something in his stance, the predatory focus of his attention, made her skin prickle. "Who is that?" "Jacques Mercier, the French operative." Dominic's jaw was granite. "The man who murdered my family." The waltz ended. Dominic bowed formally, kissed her hand, then murmured, "Find your father. Stay with him. Do not leave his sight." Before she could protest, he was gone, striding toward the corridor where Mercier had disappeared. Ceres's heart hammered. She moved toward her father, but curiosity and fear drove her to follow Dominic's path instead. In the empty corridor, she heard voices sharp, vicious. "What are you doing here?" Dominic demanded. "I came to finish what I started." Mercier's accent was thick, bitter. "You took everything from me, my career, my reputation. I took everything from you in return. But I see you've rebuilt." His gaze drifted toward where Ceres stood hidden. "Perhaps I should complete my work." Dominic attacked without warning. They crashed together with brutal force, slamming through doors into the winter garden. Glass shattered. Mercier produced a knife that gleamed wickedly in the moonlight. But Dominic fought with the desperation of a man protecting everything he loved, every blow powered by 5 years of grief, guilt, and now hope. Ceres screamed for help. Her voice brought guards running, Lord Edmund shouting commands. But in the garden, the fight continued, savage, desperate. Mercier lunged with the knife. Dominic caught his wrist, twisted, and they both went down in the snow. The blade spun away. Mercier scrambled for freedom, but Dominic tackled him, pinning him until guards arrived to drag the assassin away. "It's over," Dominic gasped, bloodied and bruised. "You'll hang for what you did to my family." Mercier spat in French, struggling against his captors as they hauled him toward the magistrates who would see him tried for murder. Ceres rushed to Dominic, her hands fluttering over his injuries. "You're hurt." "I'm alive." He caught her hands, pressed them to his chest where his heart thundered. "That's all that matters. It's over, Ceres. He can't hurt us anymore. We're free." She pulled him into a fierce embrace, not caring about the blood on his shirt or the shocked guests gathering in doorways. "Don't ever frighten me like that again. I promise to try." They returned to the ballroom as the clock began its countdown to midnight. The crowd, having learned what transpired, parted for them like the Red Sea, their faces a mixture of shock and admiration. 10, 9, 8. Dominic turned to Ceres, wiping blood from his split lip. "Last year I was dead inside. This year I live, because of you." 7, 6, 5. "Then let us live fully, together," she breathed. 4, 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year." Dominic kissed her with passionate intensity, uncaring of their audience. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Across the room, Adrian and Helena watched for a moment, then quietly slipped away, no longer relevant to this story that had never truly been about them. Later, on the terrace where this had all begun, snow fell in gentle spirals. Dominic wrapped his coat around Ceres's shoulders, pulling her against his warmth. "When shall we marry?" he asked. "Soon. I've waited long enough for happiness. 3 weeks. I'll arrange everything." They stood together, gazing out at the snow-covered estate. at the year stretching before them full of promise. "Our story began with deception," Ceres said softly. Dominic turned her to face him, his blue eyes blazing with love and life. "No, my love, it doesn't end. It begins." He kissed her under the stars, two wounded souls who had found healing in each other, ready now to face whatever future awaited them together. As we reach the final chapter of Ceres and Dominic's journey from wounded hearts to healing love, I want to thank you for staying with us. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Tell us which moment moved you most. Your support makes these tales of hope possible. 3 weeks later, on a crystalline January morning, Ceres Jones became the Duchess of Devonshire in a small church in Kent. The intimate ceremony gathered only close family and friends beneath ancient stone arches. She wore ivory, silk and lace, winter roses woven through her hair, and Dominic could not look away from his bride as she walked toward him on her father's arm. When they spoke their vows, emotion thickened every word. "I promise to see you, always, as you truly are," Dominic said, his voice rough with feeling. "And I promise to let you see me, without walls or fear," Ceres answered. Their kiss sealed a union forged not in pretense, but in profound truth. Lord Edmund wept openly with joy. The wedding breakfast at Ravensworth Manor was small but elegant. Toasts flowed freely. Lord Edmund raised his glass with trembling hands. "My daughter has found not just a husband, but a partner in every sense of the word." Lady Cambridge, surprisingly moved, added, "Sometimes the best matches are forged in adversity." But it was Dominic's toast that left not a dry eye in the room. "Ceres, you are my light in darkness, my hope in despair, my everything. I was dead before I met you. Now I live, truly live, because of you." They departed for Cornwall that afternoon, traveling to the cliff-top manor Dominic had described with such passion. When the carriage finally crested the last hill and the estate came into view, ancient stone, weathered by sea wind, perched dramatically above churning waves, Ceres gasped. "It's magnificent." Dominic helped her down, his eyes soft. "Welcome home, Duchess." The manor proved warm despite its austere exterior. Staff welcomed their new Duchess with genuine affection, and over the following days, Dominic showed Ceres every inch of his beloved estate, the cliffs, the hidden coves, the wild beaches where seabirds wheeled and cried. His passion for this place was evident in every gesture, every word, and she understood completely why he'd found solace here during his darkest years. But his greatest surprise awaited in the south wing. "Close your eyes," he instructed, guiding her through doorways. When she opened them, she found herself in a room flooded with northern light. A fully stocked art studio surrounded her: easels, paints, canvases, everything an artist could desire. "For you to paint your seascapes," Dominic said quietly. Ceres turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "You did this for me. I would do anything for you." She kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into that embrace. Weeks passed in blissful contentment. They established a rhythm: morning walks along cliff paths, afternoons spent with Ceres painting while Dominic worked the estate, evenings by the fire reading together, nights discovering each other with growing intimacy, both physical and emotional. Ceres painted the sea in all its moods: stormy grey, brilliant blue, sunset gold. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, Dominic released the guilt he'd carried for so long. One evening, as they watched the sun sink into the ocean, he said softly, "Eloise would have liked you." It was the first time he'd spoken her name without visible pain. "She would have loved you." Progress, healing. A letter from Lord Edmund brought news from London. Adrian's engagement to Helena had been broken amid muted scandal. Adrian had left England for the continent. Helena remained unwed and chastened. "They are yesterday's news," her father wrote. "All of London speaks only of the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, the love match that defied expectation." Ceres felt only distant pity. No satisfaction, no bitterness, complete indifference, true freedom. When April brought wildflowers to the Cornish cliffs, Ceres discovered she was with child. She told Dominic during their morning walk, and he stopped as though struck. "A child? Our child?" Fear flickered across his face, memories of Edinburgh, of loss, of tragedy. But then joy overtook fear. He lifted her, spun her carefully, laughing through tears. "We're going to be parents." In May, Dominic decided to face his past completely. They travelled together to Edinburgh, to the estate where his family had died. The property had been partially rebuilt, and a new family now called it home. Children played in the garden where Eloise had once painted her terrible, wonderful watercolors. "This is how it should be," Ceres said, holding his hand. "Not a tomb, but a home again." They commissioned a memorial stone for the garden, listing his parents and sister, in loving memory of those lost to fire. Dominic placed flowers at its base, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I promise to live the life you cannot, to love fully as you deserve to." Ceres held him as he grieved properly, finally cleansing tears after 5 years of guilt. Cornwall felt different when they returned. Lighter, warmer. They prepared a nursery together, painting walls in soft colors, anticipating their child. "Boy or girl?" Ceres asked one afternoon. "I don't care, as long as you're both healthy." His hand rested on her growing belly. "You've given me everything, Ceres." We gave each other everything. December arrived a full year since they'd met, their first Christmas as a married couple, with Ceres's belly round with a child due in February. They decorated the manor with evergreen and holly, hosted a small gathering for Lord Edmund and close friends, and watched snow fall beyond the windows. "A year ago, I was broken," Ceres said, leaning against her husband. "As was I," Dominic agreed. "But we found each other, and we built something beautiful from our ruins." On Christmas Eve, after their guests had retired, they sat before the roaring fire. Dominic presented her with a gift, a commissioned painting of the terrace where they'd first met, snow falling, 2 figures in shadow. "Where it all began," he said. Ceres gave him her own painting, "The Cornish cliffs at sunset, where I found home." They held each other close, reflecting on their journey. "Strange how life works," Ceres mused. "Adrian's betrayal led to this moment. The worst led to the best." "I spent years believing happiness was impossible," Dominic said. "You proved me wrong." We proved each other wrong. They talked of their child, their life ahead, plans to split time between Cornwall, Kent, and occasional visits to London. They would raise their family with love and honesty, perhaps have more children, grow old together beside this wild sea. "I desired a husband for Christmas," Ceres said with a smile. "And I desired a diversion," Dominic added. "But what we found was so much more. We found redemption. We found ourselves. We found love." As the fire died and snow fell outside, they moved to their bedroom. In the warmth and darkness, Dominic whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing past my walls, for loving me despite everything, for giving me a reason to live again." Ceres kissed him softly. "Thank you for the same." They fell asleep entwined, while outside, snow blanketed Cornwall in white. A new beginning, a new life, 2 wounded souls healed by love. 5 years later, 3 children played in the Cornish garden, 2 girls and a boy, their laughter carried on the sea wind. Ceres painted at her easel while Dominic watched, both of them older now, content, deeply happy. "Remember when we pretended?" Ceres asked. "It was never pretense," Dominic said. "Not really." "No," she agreed. "Not really." The children called for them, and they joined their family in the sunlit garden. From above, the scene was perfect, the manor, the cliffs, the endless sea beyond. Some love stories begin with deception, but the best ones are built on truth. She desired a husband for Christmas. The Duke desired a diversion. What they found was everything they needed and nothing they expected. Thank you for joining us on Ceres and Dominic's journey from heartbreak to healing. If their story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of romance, redemption, and love against all odds. Leave a comment telling us your favorite moment, and don't forget to like this video. Until next time, may you find your own unexpected love story.